All right, welcome everybody to the June 9th, 2020 Analytics Weekly. So today we have a little bit of a special agenda. We're going to kind of quickly walk the board and then get into the main item of the show here, which is a Q&A on the generic analytics report. So there are a bunch of FYIs, which we won't verbalize, but many of them are interesting. So please take a look. And now I'll just hand it over to John Mason to walk the board.
Okay, so coming back to our, let me share here. So the main question I had about how things were going has to do with our add filters to VSA story. And I wondered if someone could give me an update on how that one is going.
Yeah, just from the backend side, the last MR is under review. At the moment, I need only one thumbs up from the database maintainer and should be merged by tomorrow, I think.
And then how about on the front end? I know Ezekiel's the one that's been working on it. Do you have any sense as to where that is?
I'm not sure at all. I'm not sure if Dennis knows anything, but yeah, unfortunately don't.
I do not. I would be going through the issue to see what the latest is on that.
I had a chat with him today, and he mentioned that most of the stuff is kind of ready in a big MR, and he is about to split things down into smaller MRs and get them reviewed and merged.
Okay.
And he will try to test it with my changes to see if the integration is working. So yeah, I just thought him ping me when something is not working so I can fix it quickly.
Are there other issues that we think are at risk for this release that we're concerned about?
Anyone knows anything about contribution analytics? Who worked on it? Pavel?
I think that's already been merged.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it looks like all three of those issues were closed.
Okay.
Would it help to review the board? Just a random question.
Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, this is manage. Let me go to the.
John Mason, I've got the board up if you want me to share it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Cool. Here's our board. So no P1s. I think we're making good progress on this P2 for telemetry. And then these P3s.
That P3 is merged. I'm just doing a minor refactor on something before I close out the issue.
Sweet. That's great. And then it looks like we actually have a bunch of stuff in open that didn't have necessarily a priority label. Technical debt backstage. Icebox. Okay, so maybe actually not even all of this stuff is still in 13.1. Yeah, there's another Icebox label. Okay.
Looks like I was curious why the add filters results wasn't showing up on the board. It looks like it's missing a priority. Not sure if that was intentional.
Where'd you see that, Dennis?
I just noticed that the issue we were just discussing, add filter results control to group VSA, wasn't on this board. And I just checked, I was trying to look at why, and it was missing a priority label. So I don't know if we want to correct that or if there are other issues that are missing from this board.
Yeah, good question.
The reason I brought it up is because we were talking about the contribution analytics issues and they were all closed, but we couldn't see it from that issue description.
Right.
So I thought it would be a little bit more.
Yeah, where is that
for us to
issue?
review.
VSA. There we go. Yeah, not seeing it here.
Well, it's filter results. Maybe try that. Uh-huh.
Weird. Where is it?
There you go.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, it's in 13.1. That's very strange.
It doesn't have a priority label. That's why.
P, I mean, is our top priority for the milestones call it a P1, yeah? John Mason?
Sure.
Cool. Boom. All right. Now it'll show up on the board. Cool. Well, I think that takes care of walking the board. If we want to jump over to the Q&A.
I'll just make one brief comment as we transition to that. And that is that I did finally get all of the next up labels cleaned up, as well as the work breakdown labels and needs estimate labels and so on for things that were old. And I had some difficulty removing labels in bulk. If there's somebody's got a great tip for how to do that, I'd love to hear it. So I wound up using an icebox label in a board to sort of remove the old stuff into this icebox category. So if you see a bunch of icebox ones, that's why it's there. So we're down to like 10 items in next up or something like that. So it should be much more manageable at this point and should reflect what the plan is. All right, let's take some questions.
I can verbalize Martin's question then. So are there any plans on having subpages for a particular report page anytime soon? Martin's particularly interested in the drill-in functionality of report, as our analytics currently enable drill-in support by updating a data table based on any filters and or on a selected charts item. Other GitLab features, on the other hand, support drill-in functionality via subpages, i.e. selecting something on one page would not update the current page, but redirect async client side to a subpage. The reason I'm asking is because this would have a big impact on our front-end architecture, since we might want to consider view router in that case. So,
right, that's a great question.
Great question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me replay the question to make sure that I've understood you. And Martin, since you're not here to correct me, you'll at least know that I'm answering the wrong question. You're asking, hey, if I wanted to slice and dice the chart that is or the data that is on the reports page, would it take me to yet a further page to see some subset of that data? And the answer to the question is not really. I'll explain the qualification in a minute. But the report page itself is the lowest point in a drill down. I might have started somewhere else in the product and clicked on a number or clicked on another chart. I might be on a brand new dashboard capability several months from now and clicked on a chart there. And where I would have landed would be the reports page. And that reports page gives me access to the chart, the data behind it via, removing the or downloading the CSV. It allows me to do further filtering and so on. The sort of idea that we had about clicking on a bar in the chart and filtering a data table below it that we have in issue analytics or have been working on in issue analytics, all that kind of capability would live on the report page. So there would now be not yet a further drill down. That said, the qualification is that I could imagine a future in which I'm looking at a report page and I want to see some subset of the data there, and I know that I want to come back to it again and again. In that case, I might want to do more than just filter it for the moment. I might want to save the state of that report page as it is as a new report, which I'm going to save for my future reference or include in a dashboard somewhere else. So, one report page could lead to another by virtue of a duplicate and saving of settings and filters. But I don't expect any drill down a level below the report page. The report page is sort of the lowest level.
To your point about so I think that addresses Martin's question, at least based on my understanding of what he's asking. I don't know what the impact it has based on our usage of ViewRouter on the architecture, but you mentioned that the report page would lead to potentially another, but not a sub one. But it would still be the same page, right? Just a different set of data based on the same.
Right. If I press the duplicate button, and give it a new name, that URL is going to be the same. It's just the slug is going to be different on the end of it, but there's no.
It's going to refer to a different set of data.
Route.
Got it. Cool. So then I suppose we. Yep.
With regard to the routing question, that said, we have kicked around the idea of saying, well, the elements on that page, the JSON payloads for the elements on that page, such as the data table, series 1 in the chart versus series 2 in the chart versus series 3 in the chart, those might be, a step below the slug to get those particular, JSON payloads or whatever. But there isn't really a destination below that.
Cool. Then I think we can circle back with Martin then to understand the impact then on the front-end architecture based on that. But I think it addresses the root question of whether there's anything in terms of the page hierarchy, beneath this general reports page. Thank you.
And Adam, I think the next question is yours.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at this issue about the merge request activity report, and I'm trying to finalize the first backend issue. And here I have a question. So it's really cool that we add more simple charts to GitLab UI. And my question is about the specification, the YAML file where we kind of describe how the charts should look like, what kind of data source they are using. And the question is, can we maybe work on the YAML file, the persistence layer, where you store the YAML file a bit later until we actually have more charts ready. And based on the findings, how we actually build the charts, how do we gather the data, we have better experience what kind of input is needed and how to structure the data.
So I have an answer in mind for you, Adam, but before I jump to that, I just want to make sure I understand sort of what sorts of surprises do you think we might have? Insights has had that a YAML structure for a while now that's been used. We've proposed some very specific changes to it to allow for things like multiple series and so on that Insights doesn't have yet. What sorts of things do you think we might learn that would change our approach to it if we and might argue for delaying it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say so. From what I can get, the first few charts are basically something that are coming from us, right? We specify them, and we don't have to make a decision, even if it does the right decision right now, to start implementing YAML-related things, persisting in the repository, loading from the repository, until we actually need it. And when we need it, then actually allow users to work on, when we expose it to the user so they can edit it and customize it.
Yes, so I see what you're saying. You're saying, look, John Mason, in our first few applications of this, we're talking about embedded scenarios in which users aren't going to be able to modify this. And we could just defer that until we open this up for users.
Yes.
And I think you're right that we could get away with that. The downside in my mind is that we aren't thinking about that specification kind of all along, and then when it comes time to open that up to users, then there's kind of a whole new step to do, a whole new piece of work to do, and I'm more comfortable with thinking about the evolution of that specification, and then even being able to play with it and encourage some others to play with it even before it's fully exposed to the user. And so I would prefer, since really what we're doing is a very small iteration in Insights, it shouldn't be a heavy lift in terms of the amount of development work. My preference would be to do that in parallel with the other work that we're doing, so that we're thinking about the whole.
Okay, I mean that sounds reasonable to me, but I mean what I wanted to get is that we can get the charts out much faster when we don't have to worry about the persistence. But on the other hand, it's basically the same amount of work we have to do, and your suggestion basically allows other users within GitLab to play with these charts. So I guess that's a nice win.
We have teams on both the quality org, in both the quality org and in the development office that have volunteered to dog food some of this. We won't have everything they need to actually start embedding these charts in the handbook right away, but they've committed to working with us on a monthly basis to start playing with this. So I think it'll be really great to have their feedback.
So Adam,
Cool.
I'm actually curious. So I think we agree that the amount of work we'll end up doing, whether it's in one iteration or the other, will be the same. It's just how we're approaching it. But is it possible to perhaps consider the data types and structures for both, like the customizability, the user-facing interface, as well as like getting it out faster, and then having like the first iteration not be about the user-facing interface? Is that what you were kind of referring to? Like if we can deliver this more iteratively, or?
I'm not sure I understand. So my idea was to focus on get the charts out, and that would be the top priority. And the second priority is let's say maybe another chart or the user facing interface, the YAML file. I don't know if that's what you meant.
Yeah. And for context,
Yeah.
Dennis, the real value here is in that flexibility. It's not in so much in the specific chart. So I'd be very happy to trade chart functionality for that configurability. That's really what we're after.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I guess just trying to think of how we could be more iterative, like if the configurability was a required step or not. Yeah, but if it's critical to the first MVC, then we can disregard what my question.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about on that topic, Adam?
No. I think we are good. Thanks. I have another question.
Right.
So this is kind of pointing to the far future. So I noticed on the epic about user supplied data sets. Can you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Right.
Is it something like we accept from the customer and we aggregate or load in the database, or what is that exactly?
Right. So first thing I want to point out is that GitLab will never be a data analytics tool. It'll never be Tableau. It'll never be Sisense. That is not the goal for GitLab. But it is reasonable for customers to expect that there's some level of customizable kind of dashboard capability that's much more analogous to what they would find in Jira or Hygeia or some project like that. Part of that is having flexibility with the kind of data that is already in the tool that we can surface. But another aspect, especially as we're trying to develop value stream capabilities and will be compared against other tools that have value stream capabilities, is to be able to consume simple data from other kinds of DevOps sources. So the first application for this is just to actually aggregate data in GitLab that is not aggregated. And of course, we could do that all of ourselves as a development team without exposing any API. But oftentimes in the field, we've got solution architects and services professionals that are working with clients to meet specific needs, and a tech-savvy consumer base that can actually solve problems, faster than we will. So they might even use that to say, oh, look, we've got this data in the monitoring solution that's telling us, what our response rate is minute by minute, but we kind of would like to stretch back and see that, across 12 months. Well, Prometheus, the way Prometheus is set up for GitLab, isn't really suitable for that. They need more long-term storage. It would make sense for us to expose an API that would allow somebody to say, okay, I'm going to pull this data out, process it, push it back in so that I can see this, side by side on my dashboard with the other things that I care about. So other kinds of scenarios you might have around test results, test code coverage, builds, and so on. Over time, we'll do a lot of that ourselves, but having an open API allows other people to be working on that problem and making progress on it as well. And there are also cases where a customer doesn't use the whole GitLab suite. Maybe they use a different security tool than is embedded in our solution. Maybe they use a different CI/CD tool that is embedded in their solution. We want to provide a way for them to bring in metrics relevant to their development process from those tools as well. And having an open API, makes that much more possible. But we're talking about simple data sets. We're not talking about complex queries. We're not talking about, relational type queries and so on. You can actually do quite a lot with a pretty simple interface. And that's really what we're aiming at with customer supplied data sets. It's a pretty basic capability, a small primitive that you could do a lot with. Once we have a dashboard and stuff to surface that. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the explanation. And I had a small mention about performance and storage cost, and it's something to consider, to have when this feature is about to be developed, what kind of limits we apply on user-supplied data
absolutely.
Sets, frequency of updates and things like that.
That's right. We'll definitely need to have, especially on .com, rate limiting. We'll have to make sure it's in an appropriate tier and so on. Yep.
John Mason, could you maybe just kind of on this topic of, Jupyter and Zeppelin have been mentioned. Could you maybe walk us through kind of your perspective on, when a user would just, definitely want to use those tools? Like, I guess the position in the market, so to speak, that the GitLab charting serves, and specifically the decision to, not build something to sort of make data available for Zeppelin or Jupyter. Because there's really two directions to go here, right? Like, we kind of invest in tooling and say, hey, you should use one of these tools. Like, maybe we pick Jupyter and we say, hey, we think Jupyter is a great tool. We've built some kind of tooling so you can pull data out of our Postgres database for that. Could you talk a little bit more about that side of things?
Yeah, sure. So customers have asked and will continue to ask for ways of getting GitLab data out of the solution. Most of those asks are just for, give me a CSV file. Sometimes, most of the time, actually, customers say, look, even if you give me an endpoint with a CSV file, I can pull it at a regular basis and automate pushing it into another system if I need to. That's enough. The customers that want that are typically administrators that are trying to do corporate level reports, division level reports, especially around compliance, but sometimes when they're kind of tracking some high level KPIs and so on. They are not typically used for kind of day-to-day, so much the kind of day-to-day reporting. a project manager, an agile project manager is not a likely user of something like Jupyter to do analysis on what's going on with their team. They would typically prefer to have a sort of a dashboard library that they pull things together. And they may need some help. If they don't have the data in those widgets that they need, they may call to somebody for some help to pull that together. Some of them may be savvy enough to push some data in via a REST call, but they're not doing the sort of work that you would see from the analysis in a Jupyter notebook. That's been my experience anyway, is that they're really different personas operating at different levels of the organization.
So we're not serving the data scientists here. We're serving the folks who are just wanting day-to-day data.
That's correct.
Jeremy, I think you've got the next question.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate the clarification on how important it is to support configuration in the MVC when you're responding to Adam's questions. What I would love to better understand is from that perspective of the configuration we'd like to support as part of the MVC, what do we have like a sense of minimum requirements there? So I wasn't able to find an issue or a place that kind of described what we would like the YAML to do after the MVC is created that would allow us to kind of test with some of these internal customers. I think that I think 4 days ago, Adam left a comment about, do we have an example like queries of what we would like of some of these queries that we can add into the YAML. Do we have anything like that? What's your thought on kind of like the minimum requirements from the MVC from a configuration standpoint?
I would have to check and see which of the issues we have it in, but we have been passing around in those comments some sample snippets of the YAML. Let me see if I can pull that up. The idea is to do as little as possible in terms of delta from insights in this iteration. We're not trying to add a lot of new capability there, but we do know that there are some requirements that are a bit different. So let me see if I can pull up the planning issue and see if I can't navigate my way to a specific snippet. So here's the EMR chart with single series. And oh, I think we may have brought that into the generic reports page one. All right, maybe it's in the
I mean, I'll show you what I was able to find. It was in this. I was referencing this generic analytics page where Adam asked recently about some examples, and then you responded with this, and Adam had another question. So that led me to kind of believe that maybe there'd be some use in specifying out those minimum requirements in an issue if that didn't already exist. But maybe it already exists and I'm just not aware and I'm catching up.
Oh, well, I mean, what you're pointing out is that we've been through enough different issues with this now that we may not have pulled that up into a place where it's really handy. This is a recent snippet where we were talking about what something like that might look like. The main thing that we were looking for was that we know we're going to need the ability to accommodate multiple series, and so we just need a placeholder for that. But that's a good call out, and we'll make sure that one of these top level pages is very clear about what that.
Looks like Brandon added a link in chat. Perhaps that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, he's just linking to this issue that we've been working on. So right at the top of this one, we talked about here's kind of what the first pass might look like. Here's what it might look like over time. Adam, Jeremy pointed out that you had asked a question about that. Did you have an open question around what we're expecting from that YAML format?
Not really. I mean, first we have to make sure that, we can, it's actually somewhat compatible with the Insights engine, so we can reuse some of the code from there to query the data for the first iteration. And later on, we have to build in support for the multiple series.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the main point.
Great. All right, let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, it looks like I've already done that. Are there other questions? All right. On this topic, it seems like we've bottomed out this topic. Dennis, you had a question number 5 at the end of our agenda here.
Yeah, this was more specific to Brandon and Ezekiel. Just for context, John Mason pinged me about seeing how we could further refine this issue. So I sent out a ping via comment, and I wasn't sure if, well, I guess I'm speaking to Brandon specifically right now, but if you've had time to review this issue or not and chime in on whether we're ready to break it down further, or if the requirements still need definition or things like that. Don't want to put you on the spot, so if it's better to do this async, then we can do that.
Yeah, so I personally haven't had time to look into that one yet, but I see that Ezekiel has already started making a few comments there.
Yeah, Ezekiel spent some time with it last night, and he and I have had a couple of exchanges on it, so it's starting to move, that one, so grateful.
Cool.
Thank you, Ezekiel, when you reviewed the recording. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so it looks like we're moving things along, and there's a couple of questions that are being asked and answered in that discussion. So I suppose we can just continue at async then. So I just wanted to bring that up in case we hadn't got any response on it. So cool. Any other points?
Yeah, was this session helpful? Did we get through the items that we were hoping to in the Q&A?
For me, sure. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much, Dan. Anything else before we sign off here?
Nope, I think that rounds out our agenda here. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
All right, take care.